You're ready.
Good afternoon. This is November the 19th, 2015. We're at the JCC in Dallas, and we're doing a Roots to Boots interview with Gary Wolff. Thank you, Gary, for being with us this afternoon, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this interview. I'm going to start with asking you to tell us what you know about the immigration of either your parents or your grandparents from what I would assume would be Europe or Lithuania or Russia or someplace other than South Africa into the South African community.
So I am second generation South African, my parents being first. My grandparents, so my dad's side were both German. My grandfather was born, or spent most of his time in Nuremberg. My grandmother was from Zeltingen, which is near the French border. And during the war, just before the war, they independently went to South Africa and met there. My mother's side, my grandfather there was Lithuanian, and my grandmother South African, but from Russian descent. So I'm a melting pot. But really define myself more as a Yeka, as a German offspring than I do anything else. My dad born in Johannesburg, my mother born in Johannesburg, myself the same.
And you say you're on the one side they came from Germany. Was that right before the Second World War?
Second and a little bit during. My grandmother was very good at working with the Red Cross to create passports and paperwork to get people out. My grandfather's father was in Dachau when Jews were still able to get out of Dachau. We have some documentation on that. And slowly but surely the family moved. He was one of four brothers. One went to the United States. He thought he was going to the United States, got on the boat that said USA, which is the Union of South Africa at the time, got on the wrong boat. The other one went to South America, the other one stayed in Germany, and so went the family. So this is the first time that the South African Wolffs and the American Wolffs are actually in the same country, from the same offspring.
Okay. And the Lithuanians, at what time period did they come?
Not sure. My grandfather was very much, he defined himself as a South African, so I don't have dates.
You don't know? Okay.
Not yet.
So your parents were born in South Africa, and you say that was both in Johannesburg?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me about what you can about their life, how they grew up, what kind of schooling they had, what they have told you about their lifestyle during that period of time.
My dad's parents and my mom's parents had very different lifestyles. My grandmother, who was on my dad's side, Erna, who was born and grew up in Zeltingen, came from a very religious Jewish family, small town, one of the few communities that were there. So observant that they had their own slaughterhouse in the back of the house where the mashgiach used to come to make sure that the food was towards their freshness and level of kosher that they wanted. My grandfather, not as much, he was in the textile industry, very much on the clothing side. He was so good that he'd be able to look at your clothes and tell you just through the strands what was cotton, what wasn't. That was very much his area of specialty. During the war, lost all of their wealth, did whatever they could to get out, and went from a comfortable lifestyle to not so much. My dad grew up in a place called Dornfontein, where his parents, in South Africa, public schooling you pay for. His parents put him through school. He has a sister, so my dad was himself, his sister, and his two parents, family of four. My dad slept on a couch till he was 26, until he met my mother, and when they got married, got his first house. My mother's side of the family, my grandfather, so my dad's parents, Erna and Edmund. My mum's parents, Daphne and Luther. Luther was a barber. Very artistic, but he was a barber. My grandmother, Daphne, who I was very close with, was very much on the business side, finance, accounting, that was her area. My parents, both went to public school, public high schooling system. My dad grew up in Dawnfontein, my mother grew up in Orange Grove, so 15, 20 minutes from each other. My dad's sister, Susan, set my mother up with my dad. My mum was my aunt's hairdresser at one style. My dad was traveling the world. He came back at a welcoming home party, introduced my mother to my father. The rest is history. My mum graduated Waverley Girls High School, went into the cosmetology business and was cutting hair for many years until my sister was born, and then she got involved in the insurance industry. My parents lived in Johannesburg until 2009. And November 2008, 2009, they moved to South Florida. My sister, same schooling as I had. She went to primary school publicly, she went to high school publicly. She got a degree in communications and industrial psychology and psychology. And then we have family that lived in Florida. She came for a family wedding and never left the country, and I followed my sister. So
tell me
very
about
different.
Tell me about your childhood.
Family of four: mother Sandy, father Harry, my sister Jody, myself. Very, very close family. I would say that as strict and from both of my parents. My mother pushed me in school. I was not an academic at all. Give me a sporting infrastructure, a sports field. I was very, very happy. I was very, very shy until I was close to 10 years old, 11 years old, so shy I couldn't ask for help in class. My mother found every way possible to have me not only tested to see how she could be supportive and help me grow, but found a way for me to get involved, as the school recommended, in speech and drama. My parents made a lot of sacrifices for my sister and myself, and they never questioned it. It was very much about how we as a family are going to stay together, and they've instilled that across, and I want to believe that who I am today, both professionally, as a father and personally, and how I look at all my relationships, very much stem from the relationships my parents have had together, but what they've instilled in us. So, if anything, it was positive,
Mm-hmm.
and I hope that I can leave a little bit of a legacy as my parents have left.
Sounds
I mean-
fantastic. So after high school, did you go on for your upper education in South Africa, or did you do that here in the States?
I did in South Africa. My mother really pushed me to do so. I was really not interested in tertiary education. My mom made me go and get my undergraduate degree.
Where did you go?
I went to a school called the Aristotelian College of Marketing. It's affiliated to the Institute of Marketing Management, which is networked internationally through the American Marketing Association and the Asian Pacific Marketing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. Today I'm 35 years old. I have an idea what I want to do with my life, but there's still so much more that I can continue to dream. I think I learned two things in school. Your ability to sit and listen to the people around you could teach you more than any lecture. And the second is, if you don't practice what's been given to you, you don't have the ability to implement it. And school was not easy for me. So to sit down and study was not my primary use of my time, so much so that my parents found every opportunity to figure out how to get me to study. South African community, I lived at home until I moved to the United States, which was June 22nd, 2004. That's when I landed, actually, June 23rd, 2004. I started working here. I was ironically enough, in fashion retail and clothing stores, so it seems that I got a little bit of the family lineage and blood when it came down to clothing.
Who did you work for?
I worked for a company called Truworths International Limited.
Mm-hmm.
I started off when I was 18 as a tool operator, and I slowly but surely moved to supervising casual staff. And by the time I was 21 years old, the company offered me my own store. I was studying at the time, and my parents said, go and do it, but you have to finish. But if you're going to work, you're going to help pay for the rest of your schooling to make sure that you finish it.
Mm-hmm.
I was there until I was given an opportunity to come and work for Hillel, the Foundation for Jewish Campus Life, which I knew nothing about at the time. I was driving home from from work one Friday night on my way to shul, and my phone rang and it said unknown on it, and I got excited. I thought it was my sister, and it was a man by the name of Jordan Tannenbaum, who today is the Chief Development Officer of the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
He was working for Hillel, the Foundation for Campus Life, and he called to ask me questions about how the Jewish community secures itself and what Jewish engagement looks like at a younger population. And he called me every single week for 6 months. Came December, I came to visit my sister, and Jordan met me for breakfast, where I met a man by the name of Bradley Lay, who ended up being my first my first employee in the country. So July 1st, 2004, I went to go work for Hillel of Broward Palm Beach, where I spent 5 years of my life engaging students, programming, getting very involved. I then became an assistant director and an acting director. And in 2009, after Tess and myself got married, we moved to Connecticut so that I could be the executive director of the Hillel at the University of Connecticut, where we were for 6 years. Both of our beautiful boys, Matteo and Nico, were born in the same hospital, St. Francis, which is in Hartford, Connecticut. And 6 months into Nico's life, Bradley tried really hard, and he decided to bring back a relationship that we worked together for a long time. So it's nice that my friend and professional mentor became my employer again, and I joined him as the Chief of Staff of the Federation. So someone who was actively involved voluntarily Jewishly, who never thought would work in a Jewish community or Jewish professionally, seems to be working very much involved in the idea of strengthening a strong and vibrant Jewish community, which is something which I hold personally very, very dear.
Tell me about your wife. You met her in Florida. Tell me about your wife.
So I met my wife Tess through a friend of mine named Joel. Joel and I worked together at Hillel. Englishman and a South African, you put them together, and then you've got sports, which lay down the foundation. Joel was dating a girl by the name of Alyssa. Joel and I would spend 7 days a week, and then he met Alyssa and he disappeared for a few days. At a time, I wanted to know where my friend was going, and he was special enough to take so much of his time. Joel set up a blind date over breakfast where Tess wanted to meet Joel and I wanted to meet Alyssa. Long story short, Tess and I met. I asked her for her number. She's going to dispute this conversation, but I asked her for her number. She said no. I asked her, I then gave her my number at the end because I told her she couldn't have too many friends in the world. I went back to South Africa to see my parents for 3.5 weeks. We stayed in touch. We started dating. Joel and Alyssa broke up. Tess and I got married. I could not be happier. I'm fortunate enough to have not only a woman who's as beautiful inside as she is outside, but she's by far the better 2/3 of my relationship. She's smart, driven, ambitious, both professionally and personally. I've never met somebody who's as brilliant on a sports field as she is as a mother, bringing up 2 kids. I'm not the easiest personality in the world, and she not only balances me, but helps me understand the world in ways that I don't necessarily see it. I'm very fortunate to have her.
Did she grow up in Florida?
Tess was born in Lima, Peru, one of the few Jewish Peruvians that was there. She moved to the United States with her parents when she was 1 year old and spent the first 9 years of her life between Los Angeles and Maryland. Her dad, my father-in-law Ronnie, is a gastroenterologist. They moved for his residencies, and when she was 9 years old, they settled in South Florida. So Tess lived there and didn't really see cold until she met me. She got married, and the rest is history. But yeah, she's great. We have 2 beautiful boys. Today, Mateo's 3.5. He'll be 4 in March. Great kid. Is my doppelganger as a young kid. Smart, intelligent, driven, proud. We have Nico, the same. You have 2 dark-haired people who have very blue-eyed, blonde-haired kids. I was blonde until I was 20, and then we went very dark, so if anyone wants to know where that's from, that's why. But I could not be more blessed. I have a job that makes me think and challenges me daily. I have kids that I look so forward to going home to every single day, who I love with every essence of my body, and a wife who balances the world and gives me the ability to see it in ways I cannot complain about life.
You mentioned sports. Were you actively involved in sports as a child?
Very much so, and still very much into sports. When I was 6 years old,
soccer?
Very much so. At 6 years old, I acquired the love of a soccer team called Liverpool Football Club. I've been following it still to this day. So Mateo and Nico hopefully one day will continue to love the passion and drive. I played soccer, I swam, I played squash, I played tennis, I played field hockey, played rugby for a very little bit of time. Being active still today is very important to me. It's very important to Tess. We're an active family. But yeah, if you're in the house, either the TV's on sport or it's on the news. Or maybe one of there's the ability to disagree, and I'm not one that walks away from challenge, and I'm not one that walks away from confrontation or disagreement. I believe that if I differ from your opinion, then I have the ability to learn. I may not agree with you, but I can learn your point and maybe shift my mind a little differently. Our base is split. Tess has friends that she grew up with or went to school with, University of Florida, that live here in Dallas. I have a friend of mine that I grew up with, I hadn't seen in 20 years, Jackie Dorfman-Felder, who lives half a mile from us. So We Diverse is a little bit of a taste and feeling of home within the Jewish community, especially the South African community, but we're also an American family. Mateo and Nico are first generation. We laugh, we call them our little African American Hispanics.
Do they speak Spanish?
Tess speaks to them Spanish every day.
Right.
It's important. I think when you understand where you come from and who you are, it will help solidify who you want to be, and it's up to you to continue what that legacy looks like. So for me, I look at, Daphne and Luther and Edmund and Erna, and I look at my parents and I look at the values that was instilled in them. I look at not only their personal sacrifices that they had to make to move to South Africa, but what it took to bring up a family, and I don't think it was easy. My parents grew up during the heart of apartheid. Schools were integrated when I was 12 years old, so it was very different. I was in South Africa when Nelson Mandela was elected president, and I was in the United States when Barack Obama was elected president. So I can say I was in both countries when history was made. But you take that base of challenge and proud of your culture and your background, but not necessarily proud of your history, and know that you have the ability, and if not obligation, to leave a better infrastructure and foundation moving forward.
You were in the public schools in South Africa.
Yes.
So when
Glen Hazel Primary, actually.
Okay, so when the schools were integrated, what, if any, impact did that have on you personally?
I didn't know any different. My parents were very welcoming, as most South African homes. Doesn't matter your socio-economical background, there's normally somebody that works in the house twice a week, 3 times a week, 5 days a week, living or not. I was young. I was 7, 8 years old when Mandela was released from prison. I remember vividly sitting on the floor of my parents' friend's house, watching the news feed of him being released, and the comments that were coming out of some of the families that were around the floor, and my father expressing how negativity is in the way moving forward. So to me, integration was less about race. It wasn't, it was, I went to school one day and I went to school the next day, and we had black people in our class, and we went and we played sport. During break, we normally kicked around a soccer ball, or we played cricket, and the white community played here and the black community played separate, until somebody came and took the soccer ball away from us, and it became a physical fight. And it was the first time that I got into real trouble in school for being in an altercation. And I got home and my parents were disappointed in the fact that I was involved in an altercation, and it wasn't because I was white and he was black. It was because this kid took away the soccer ball and didn't want to play and punched me, so I punched him back. It was, for us, it wasn't about race. It didn't affect, but I didn't even think about it until I brought a friend home for lunch, and Lizzie, who was our maid at the time, who refused to feed him at the table. And she knew, as I always do, bring a friend home, that I'm bringing a friend tomorrow, please ensure that we have lunch at the table. And Kolani came to sit at the table and Lizzie wouldn't feed him. She said, it's not your place to be at the table. And it was the first time I really had to think about it. I was like, he's my friend, why don't you? And I was actually embarrassed that my friend was treated differently at the table. We weren't a very politically active family. I know that the Jewish community, even though it wasn't very well spoken, was very much against apartheid.
Right.
But we weren't an African National Congress family or, against, political activism. We were against apartheid as a movement, knowing what our family had taken care of in Germany and
Right.
Europe. We didn't want the same.
So how did you handle it when your housekeeper wouldn't feed your black friend?
We spoke about it. She told me that if she wasn't, for a long time, that white people and black people didn't eat at the same table. It wasn't okay. My argument was, but my mother said it's fine, so it's fine.
So did she finally feed him?
She fed.
Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
she fed him. It was an interesting conversation, and we learned from it. But I'm a Jewish South African who English is my home language.
Mhm.
I'm learning Afrikaans in school and maybe a little bit of Zulu.
Mhm.
By the time I'm in high school, 1994, I'm 14 years old. English and Afrikaans are no longer the only two official languages in the country. So you have to pick an African language at that time in order to learn at the same time.
Oh, really?
And Lizzie spoke Zulu.
Uh-huh.
So I grew up learning the Zulu culture, a little bit of the Zulu culture. But Kulani wasn't Zulu, he was Sotho. There are multiple dialects and differences.
Mhm.
So it was the first time that I had the ability to learn that how we operated as a white community culturally wasn't necessarily accepted in the black community. We're sitting here having a conversation and we look at each other eye to eye.
Mhm.
But if you were an older black person and I'm in South Africa, I can't look at you eye to eye. It's disrespectful. I have to look down.
Disrespectful to who? To the what? To the black
It's
person?
disrespectful to you as the black person.
Oh,
I
I see.
have to look down. Only if I'm older than you or your age.
Oh, it's
or
an
equal.
age issue.
It's a respect issue.
Uh-huh.
As a white male, we didn't hold hands as we walked down the street to each other. You high five each other, you give hug. But as a black friend of mine, my age, you hold your hands together when you walk down as a sign of solidarity down the
Right.
street. It's just culturally there was a very big difference.
Interesting.
There was a lot to learn, and I think having the privilege of growing up in that change helped me understand that being a humanitarian and believing in humanity is very important, and that it doesn't matter your external,
Mhm.
but it very much matters about what you can do to make this place a better place, and your internal intellect is what we should talk about, and that will be our common ground. Agree to disagree or educate, but you don't judge a book by its cover.
Sounds
What was
like
my-
you had a very privileged experience having gone through that. I mean, a lot of people left because they didn't want to experience that. They fled beforehand. They didn't want to be any part of it. But it sounds to me like going through that was really a privileged educational experience for you.
Very, very much so. Look, I'm very fortunate. I have aunt and uncle in South Florida that, Lothar and Colin, that really went out of their way to get my sister Jodie and myself into this country. I arrived here, 2 suitcases, a backpack, $600. My sister had an apartment. We made a deal. We'll go 50-50 down the line. I had 7 weeks to figure out how to make my money last. My aunt and uncle gave me my bed, and they gave me my mattress and my bed, and figured it out. And I was able to take the drive and the passion and grow. So yes, I was very privileged if I think about what the experience was in order to learn. And I think maybe some of it was financial. We weren't a very wealthy family. My dad worked really hard. My mom worked really hard to have what we had. We didn't not have what we needed. We were very comfortable, but we weren't a family that could pick up and relocate to another country and not change our lifestyle. And my parents, in their 60s, sold up everything, won the green card lottery, and moved to the United States, moved to South Florida 6 months before I got married. They still live there. I don't think this is the lifestyle that they had figured out that they would have, which was, in Johannesburg we live together.
Mhm.
You stay as a community. You're born in Johannesburg. You marry Johannesburg. You die in Johannesburg. You're 20 minutes from your family.
Right.
It's very much a family circle.
Right.
And I live in Dallas, and my sister lives in South Florida. my parents live near my sister. My kids through FaceTime and
Right.
4 times a year visits.
Right.
Whether we going to Florida or they coming here, have a relationship with my parents, which I think my parents would prefer being around here and being part of their life, because
Of course.
that's who we are. Family is everything.
So you still have relatives living in South Africa?
My mum's brother Kenny, his wife Joanne, their 3 kids, Carrie, Tracy, Craig. Yes. My dad's sister Susan, her kids Mark and Michelle.
Have you taken your family to South Africa to see what it's like?
Not yet. Part of it is financial
Mhm.
and distance, but when my kids are older and they can appreciate it, we will take it.
How about to Peru?
We've been to Peru a few times. We're actually taking Mateo and Nico for the first time on Thanksgiving. We'll go for a few days. Tessa's grandfather and grandmother are still alive. I think it's very important for our kids to meet and know a little bit of their lineage, so we'll go to them.
I think my last question to you, in terms of what legacy you'd like to leave for your children, what's the most important thing you'd like to say to them, for them to remember in terms of what you think is important in life and what you'd like to pass on to them?
I think family is everything. The relationship and the ability to communicate and be together is the most important thing you can take, because blood is thicker than water. In other words, for Mateo and Nico, if they don't have each other, they don't have anything, because Tess and myself aren't going to be here forever. You can make money, and when and if you do, doesn't matter how much you have, give it back to your community. Be philanthropic, volunteering both time and money in any way that you can. Because what you put into your community is what you're going to get out of your community. What you put into your family is what you're going to get out of your family. Don't settle for second best. Just don't settle. Status quo is not okay. We come from a family and a foundation that loves each other. We agree to disagree with each other. But more importantly, we will stay together and we'll stick together and we will push any way that we can. But the impact that we make today lays down the roots for the future. So this is roots to boots. I think it's very fitting. It's at what point does your root get uplifted in order to move, or, as I like to see it, what additional roots are we laying in order to ensure that our tree just gets stronger? So don't cut it down.
Thank you so much, Gary. It's been a real privilege interviewing you today and getting to know you. Appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for the questions and the opportunity, and I appreciate what you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.